There's been another horrific mass shooting, this one in Boulder, coming on the heels of a mass shooting in Atlanta, in the massage parlors of Atlanta. And sure enough, the left is out to cook up a narrative. Now, remarkably, these shootings don't fit the left's narrative. But the left's narrative right now, at this moment, is Joe Biden acting with a sense of uncharacteristic sort of urgency. He's normally such a kind of sleepy, slowpokey, bumbling type of guy, but he's like, oh, I'm going to take a rapid action. Action on what? Action on guns. Listen.
Future and to urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to act. We can ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
So, wow, I guess it was the gun that did it. Now, it's kind of funny because when you see these horrific killings, and we've seen, unfortunately, too many of them, it's not always the weapon that's blamed. Think of it. In 9/11, there were 3,000 people killed. Did you see anyone go, let's outlaw box cutters? Let's outlaw airplanes, because after all, the deadly weapon at 9/11 was in fact the airplane itself. Now people say, well, Dinesh, yeah, we did try to restrict box cutters on airplanes, but the main screening after 9/11 was really simple. Let's prevent fanatics and psychos from having access to airplanes. So the logical consequence here, or the logical implication here, in the aftermath of Atlanta and the aftermath of Boulder is, let's prevent dangerous fanatics and psychotics from being able to get their hands on deadly weapons. Let's put those procedures in place, but not prevent law-abiding people from gaining access to guns any more than law-abiding people should be prevented from buying a box cutter or boarding an airplane. Now, the reason that the left is talking about the gun is they really can't talk about the shooter or the motive for the shooting because it completely ruins their narrative. So here's their narrative. Whenever a Muslim guy is involved in a shooting, the left knows only two words to say. One is white supremacy, and the other is Islamophobia. So it's got to be white supremacy that did it, and it's got to be Islamophobia that is the problem. But in this case, we have a problem. Why? Because the shooter was Muslim and seemingly a radical Muslim. I'm going to go into that. And the victims, all 10 of them, were white. Now let's think about it. In the Atlanta shooting, 6 of the 8 victims were Asian American. And the immediate implication was hate crime. This is a hate crime against Asian Americans, even though the shooter in that case, a white guy, said, I'm a sex addict. I hate these massage parlors. I'm out to get rid of them. And so his motive appeared to be some kind of psychotic response to a sex addiction, nothing to do with race. And not all the victims were Asian American. In this case, Boulder, all the victims are white, and yet no mention of any animus toward whites that might have motivated this attack. Suddenly, the hate crime language has completely disappeared. Now let's turn to the shooter himself. He's Ahmad Aliwi al-Issa. Interestingly, when the Boulder police chief was talking about him, she kind of compressed his name. She didn't say his full name. Listen.
The suspect was taken into custody at 3:28 p.m. He was transported to the hospital for treatment, now in stable condition. This suspect has been identified as Ahmad Alyssa, 21 of Arvada.
So you notice I'm not saying this is a woman who's trying to put out a false narrative, not at all. But I'm saying there's that natural trepidation. It's kind of the trepidation you see when even a woman who's raped is scared to say the guy who did it is black. Or in this case, the guy has a Muslim name, draw your own conclusions. No, she sort of had to edit his name out of that natural fear that she'd somehow be called a racist. So here you've got a head cop in the wake of a mass shooting, and what she's scared about is what they will say about her. She's an Islamophobe. And sure enough, almost comically, there are efforts to blame this on Islamophobia. Here's a little snippet from a CNN article that says this. This is the brother of Ahmad Aliwi al-Issa, told CNN that in high school, bullies made fun of Alyssa's name and for being a Muslim, and that may have contributed to him becoming antisocial. So here's the supposed motive. Islamophobia made him sort of antisocial. Now, omitted from the CNN article are all these very telling facts. This guy, Al-Issa, is a radical Muslim. From his Facebook, and by the way, Facebook quickly took his profile down, seemingly to, we don't want to draw attention to, but these things are revealing because on his Facebook you see, A, the guy absolutely hates Trump. In fact, he calls Trump a racist. He rails about Islamophobia. This is the mass shooter railing about Islamophobia. Well, what exactly is Islamophobia? Is Islamophobia the belief that somewhere in our society there are some Muslim fanatics and crazies around who are capable of killing large numbers of innocent people? Hello? Far from refuting Islamophobia, this guy is vindicating it because he is proving that the suspicion that you've got these crazies among us who are motivated by Islam is correct, Now, this is a guy who's from Syria. He's a Syrian immigrant. He's very involved in the Syrian situation. He blames Trump, he blames Putin, he blames Assad. He's on the radical Muslim side of the Syrian civil war. All of this omitted from not only the CNN article, but much of the media coverage. Why? Because they don't want to talk about the shooter's motives. The shooter was not a Trump guy. He was an anti-Trump guy. Turns out that the shooter liked to read certain sites that he was constantly quoting. Guess what they are? The Intercept, the left-wing political site. The Washington Post, NPR. In other words, the shooter is getting his information from the political left in America, and that information evidently is having a radicalizing effect on him. Bottom line, this is a very telling mass shooting because it doesn't fit the narrative. For this reason, one possibility is the left will just try to stop talking about it. And the second possibility, perhaps more likely, is they don't want to talk about who did it. They don't want to talk about motive. Had it been a white guy, it would be automatically assumed the motive is white supremacy. Yeah, the white man did it. Whereas here I'm looking at article after article after article on the shooting, and I noticed that nowhere does it use the word Muslim. Never in the headline. Man charged. Man charged. A man did it. Not one article goes, Muslim man charged. So what I'm pointing attention to here is the discrepancy in when the adjective makes its way into the headline and when it doesn't. We're dealing here not just with what happened, a tragedy, but the deeply cynical, dishonest manipulation of what happened by some dirty, rotten scoundrels.